Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is 11 o'clock, and I will call our June work session to order. Welcome to each of you, and welcome to each of you that are watching online. Madam Clerk, if you would kindly call the roll.
Sure. Mr. Cole?
Here.
Mr. Hunter?
Here.
Mr. Benson?
Here.
Mr. Parrish?
Here.
Mr. Dwyer?
Here.
Mr. Reed?
Here.
And Mr. Davis?
Here. Thank you, ma'am. Before we get into our regular order of business, I asked the chief to join us today and to give us a brief update on the things that have been going on. Before he does that, you will find at your workstation a Facebook post that was passed along to me in regards to the events of yesterday. The Facebook poster's name has been deleted, but this was one of the organizers of the event. And while you can certainly read the entire post, I specifically want to call your attention to the edit at the end, and I want to commend the chief for his excellent outreach efforts and resolving a situation that could have turned into something far worse. And he clearly exhibited leadership in its truest form yesterday in resolving that situation. With that, Chief, would you, where are we coming to, Mr. Town Manager?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Been seeing everybody the past 3 months. It's been some very trying times, and now we're dealing with even more difficult times. So appreciate the kind words from the mayor. This week has been very trying, to say the least, and very mind-boggling and tiresome as well. I did reach out to to Megan yesterday after seeing the Facebook post of what was going on. After consulting with the town manager about it, we felt that it was the best thing to do to try to reach out to her. And this is also something that I've always done in the past when we had different organizations coming to town from outside. And I felt that it worked very well and it's very beneficial, was trying to identify the organizer and reaching out to them directly. And it surely pays dividends, I can tell you that, as it did yesterday. I'm very proud of this group for wanting to express their First Amendment rights and doing it in such a sound, professional, respectful manner. You could not ask for anything better than what occurred yesterday, and that's the way it should be done. We're very fortunate here in our community to have the bonding that we have with each other and the support that we have with each other to be able to do it the way that it's supposed to be done, and not what the nation's seen in other cities and states. So we can only pray and hope that we can keep it that way here in our town, in our community. But on the other hand, we have to watch out for the outsiders. And I think that's what's happening in our larger cities. The people that are protesting are wanting to do it the right way, but it's the antis that are coming in and causing the distractions and doing the violence. And it's making the protesters that want to do the right thing look so bad. So, with that said, just to kind of give you an update of what we've been doing, we tried to get before the community on Monday. We made a public statement from all law enforcement. I've been watching the tweets and the Facebook posts, and it seems to have gone over very well. We mean what we said as law enforcement. We are not proud of what happened. We are not proud of the death of George Floyd. This is not the way it's supposed to be, and it's not the way that law enforcement is supposed to act out here. It's not the way that we are trained to do our job. And I will see to it here, and I think the other leaders in this community will also see to it, our officers are not going to act that way. We're not going to tolerate it, number one. If we see it, if we start to see patterns of it, they can find somewhere else to go because they're not going to be with us. We were very fortunate that a couple of years ago when we first started seeing protests and riots, we acquired a lot of equipment. The council approved for us to get. We had 10 officers trained as a field force unit that can work side by side in conjunction with the state police. So we have that equipment ready, available. We've gone through it. Unfortunately, at this time, the only thing that's concerning to us is that we may not get the support of the state police and what they're dealing with elsewhere in the state. We reached out to our counterparts, the surrounding counties. Everybody's in agreement. If anybody has any trouble, just sound the alarm and the cavalry's coming. So, we got different plans that I won't get into at this time. We have ordered additional supplies. Most of that will be coming in today. Thank goodness we were able to get our hands on it. So we feel like we're in a sound position. If anything, God forbid, should take place, we'll be ready to handle it. Any questions from any of y'all?
Any questions? Chief, thank you for your efforts and all you're doing, and kudos for the leadership that you've exhibited during these trying times.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, let's move to the next item on our agenda. The council retreat is scheduled, and there was some discussion about perhaps we should delay it. Town Manager, I think you have some thoughts you wanted to share along those lines.
Yes, just to remind you of the dates that we have is for Thursday it'd be a half a day on June the 25th, and then Friday, June the 26th, it would be another half a day. So Thursday, the second half of the day, noon to 5-ish, and Friday would be 8 to noonish. And we could discuss whether you have lunch both days, those types of things. Something light in the winter. I think it's important in a lot of ways. I think I made this point before at our last meeting. One, it helps everybody be on the same page. And it's very important to me because to have 8 different people that you work for and not necessarily know that everybody might be on the same page on different items. And I mean, that's going to happen, but as far as large items of where we're going to be within the next 12 months, 18 months, what are you looking at long term? Those are things that this retreat can do for us. It also, I think it would be good for everyone here as far as you'll have a new council member coming in July. I think it would be beneficial for that person. So I would just say that, and for me, being new in this role, not maybe new to all of you all in the town, but for what we're trying to do for setting up and organizing a little differently, I think professionally it's helpful in a lot of ways. Kim Payne, I've talked to him. He is willing to, he's got some questions that he'd like to ask each council member prior to. I have those that he sent me ready. He would like to do no more than 30 minutes on the phone with you all, probably the week of June the 15th. He's got some days. Jackie's going to help me get that scheduled, and then he'll give you a call, get a number from you at the time. And I'd give you those questions ahead of time so that you know what they are and be prepared and have time to think about them. And it helps him plan the direction of the retreat and the areas in the discussion pieces of what's needed more than others. So with that, it's totally up to you all, obviously.
Thank you, sir. There's been some discussion, and several of you have talked to me about, given the times we're in, that we may want to think about postponing it, doing it maybe in the fall. Scott really wants to get it done sooner rather than later. So I told him we would just discuss it today at work session. You know, I'm not sure that I could set for hours with this on. What's the pleasure of council? Do you think we should try to move forward with it in June or postpone it to a later date? What's the feeling?
I'm in favor of moving forward with it. Everything is fairly uncertain, so that in my mind, that makes the fall uncertain as well. We don't know if there's a reoccurrence in a stronger capacity of this, and I'm just inclined to be more proactive than reactive, and I'd like to proactively plan for the future, and I think now is a good opportunity with a mediator who is experienced in local government and with new council members and a new town manager. I'm in favor of rolling with it.
The question is, the new council member won't be in on it. She don't come on until July. So,
We could invite her.
I think we should.
She should be invited.
maybe, she'll be left out.
She could be
I had
invited.
talked to you about it involved because of everything.
Yeah, I know you have concerns, and that's why I want us to talk about
But
it.
like you said, we can be sitting here for a while with this mask on, just, but it's up to the council.
It's council decision.
If we delay it, it sounds like we'd be delaying it just indefinitely. If we don't know when these, we don't know when the masks are gonna come off. I personally, I'm happy to attend June or August, but I don't have a strong opinion.
I just add, we don't know when phase 3 will be either, so it's all about the numbers. It could be before July, it could be the end of this month, that phase 3, and I'm pretty sure probably by phase 3, I'm hoping this won't be a requirement as it is now, but we'll see.
Well, I'm wearing this mask 8 hours a day, so it doesn't bother me. I'll leave it up to you all. But I've gotten used to it, so.
Do you get used to it?
You do. You do. Sometimes you walk out the building with it. Yeah.
I really don't have any heartburn one way or the other. I could go with either way. I'm content. If we want to move forward with it, as far as Brian was saying, be proactive instead of reactive, I'm perfectly fine with that.
I'm okay. My life's unpredictable right now, so.
I think all of us are.
We can set it for it.
Here's
As we get closer.
We evaluate.
Comes about.
Yeah. My job requirements change today.
I'm willing to do whatever council wants to do. Obviously, as you members know that into June, I will be coming off of council, but I'd certainly be happy to give my opinion before I do. So I'm completely fine with doing it in June.
I'll make a motion that we continue on the path that we scheduled originally, and if it needs to be changed when the time comes, we can adjust accordingly.
I second that motion.
Any other discussion?
So you will contact Sally, see if she's available for
Yeah. If y'all are agreed.
Sure.
What are the times again?
25th and 26th,
25th and 26th, noon to 5 on that Thursday, and 8 to noon on that Friday.
Noon to 5 and 8 to noon. And we're doing it in the EOC,
Yes, sir.
so we're social distancing and all that. Okay, motion second. Any other discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, we'll continue down that path unless there's some other distractions along the way that we need to reschedule for. Mr. Davis, do you want to present the budget, the 2021 budget?
Yes, sir. I have provided, or Jackie's provided actually, in your council Dropbox, the proposed 2021 fiscal year budget. as it says in my cover letter, which is fairly new for you all, this budget has been vetted by the Finance and Ordinance Committee of Council. Just to give you a little bit, you can read that for yourself, but to give you some details, the total budget is $23,419,357.71. It encompasses $12,424,977.63 in the general fund, $1,732,469.72 in the street maintenance fund, $2,104,359 in the water fund, $2,405,110 in the sewer fund, $771,943 in the transportation fund, and $3,980,398.36 in the airport fund. Most of that is federal grants, by the way, in the airport. If you break that down by fund of the proposed budget, 53% is in the general fund, 8% of the overall is in the street maintenance fund, 9% in the water fund, 10% sewer fund, transportation fund is 3%, and the airport fund is 17%. And all the monies for the street maintenance fund this year are those monies that we received from VDOT for street maintenance. I took the liberty to explain, because this should be a public document when we're done, and it should be available to help the public understand the budget a little bit better. So most of you know what the general fund is, what those other funds are, but there's some bullet points to explain that for everyone in the public that might not be aware, and they can better understand this document if they decide to go and use it and look at it, which is beneficial. I touch, obviously with 53% being the general fund, that is what I highlight the most, and that is really what we use on a daily basis to operate the daily operations of the town for the most part, other than water and sewer funds. I talk a little bit about the revenue to give you some highlights. It's all revenues are based on how we project to finish the current year, which is 1920. For revenues, B-poll, sales tax, meals tax, and lodging tax have been decreased by approximately 12% of the projected finish of this year. And the reason for that is obviously we're not projecting like we traditionally would in prior years because of where we are in the pandemic and what has transpired. And so with this is what we're working towards and hoping that that'll be all, and optimistic that our revenues will be decreased by in the coming year. There is a transfer from the water fund of $325,000. There's a transfer from the sewer fund of $900,000. And then we're going to carry over the set-aside account, which is primarily set up, if you remember, several years ago, so that we can make our bond payment. So we're saving money along the way. And that, at the end of this current fiscal year, in June 30th, 2020, that we will carry over in June 30 of 2020, is we're anticipating $1,365,890.67. That should be enough to make our September payment and still have some in that account. If you remember, sometimes it depends on who I'm talking to, I probably sound like a broken record, but it's helpful to keep everybody's mind on this. Cash flow wise, and no, I'm not saying we don't have any money. What I'm saying is cash flow wise, from September to December is the most difficult time of the year for us cash flow wise. So by what you all have done by keeping this fund intact is we're able to make that payment easier, and we have money to operate, that we're not having to come up with that money in a different way. However, in the future, I would like to work toward a goal to reduce the transfers from water and sewer so that the general fund can stand more on its own, and and we can use those funds in the future for more capital expenses in those water and sewer funds. But the way to do that is to do what we're doing right now, and that is decrease our debt service while not incurring any more debt on any new loans or bonds on any new debt. And so if we can do that for several years out and just be able to afford what we can, we'll be able to reduce that debt service, and that should help us alleviate some of those transfers along the way. I think that will make us financially more stable in the future years. We talk about fund balance. That's one way of doing that is in having during these emergent times. If you look at fund by revenue, taxes and licenses are 52%. The fund type by revenue. 33% is transfers and interest. So that's the transfers from those other accounts. That's the interest on some of the accounts that we have. And permits and fee, and the rest of them are somewhat minor. I did not break it out for you, but in the budget letter, we can talk about this more next week if you want me to. I can bring it to you about what those are in taxes and licenses that make up that 53%, but it hasn't changed much since the last time I told you that. It's food tax. I mean, it's not going to change. So I've given you that before. Just the numbers change a little bit as far as the amounts, depending on the year. Expenditures, as I mentioned, we've frozen certain positions until revenues show that they can be filled. We've looked at each department by line item and reduced some from prior years. And at the request of the Finance and Ordinance Committee, you'll notice that the contingencies and transfers and contingencies is a little larger than normal. And that's because the capital that we didn't cut, that is in the budget, is in the contingency fund instead of in the departments, so that another layer of making sure that we're not purchasing more than our revenue is we would come to council and show that the revenue is there in order to make those capital purchases. Because anything that's in contingency has to be approved by council. Once it's actually in the department budget, it's a little different. So if you look at those broken out, it shows if it starts at legislative, which is about 12 o'clock, maybe in between 12 and 1, is the 3%, and then it goes around like a clock. If you can't distinguish the colors, from the right-hand side, if you just start at 3% and go like a clock, you can follow those, and that gives you percentages of how expenditures are spent in the general fund. The full document is in your folder. Also in there is the capital improvement program. It's a 5-year program. It is a guide for us to look at how we fund in future years capital projects, and they have to be updated each year. So you'll have that for next week. The public hearing is based on the budget. Capital improvement program goes into the budget. So that is a process that we do internally to make sure what we can and can't afford to put into the budget or not. And so what you'll have the public hearing on next week is the actual budget itself. But I would like, for just purposes of making sure that you have seen it and you know what's in it, that the council approve the 5-year capital plan. Not in that you agree with everything in it, but that this is a plan that we have provided to you and you've seen it and you've read it and those types of things. Also, you'll have in there every year, as I said before, I will ask you to approve the compensation and classification study. That's in your packet as well. It has the list of positions, what the minimum, median, and maximum are. Does not go into detail with individuals and their wages, but those only change when you determine what we might do in that year or not. but it gives you, so that you're aware of that plan and that you agree with it. Mayor, I think that's all I have in reference to the budget.
Okay, I appreciate all your hard work. I will say that, council, the finance committee especially, and Scott and Caroline have put a tremendous amount of effort into the budget. I think the council is clearly taking the appropriate approach. It's been a very measured approach. It's been with the idea of keeping everybody as whole as possible without making major cuts, slashes, and we've been able to maintain all the employees, maintain most all of our services, and we don't have any tax increases. So I clearly think that you're on the right track, council's on the right track with this. Over the last couple of weekends, I've noticed downtown there's a tremendous amount of pickup in traffic. Last night I was out on the south end, and one of the hotels out there, the parking lot was absolutely full. So I do believe that things are a bit more optimistic than when we started on this path in March. So again, I think we're clearly taking the right approach. Any questions with council?
I would like to say, Mr. Mayor, too, that I think that one of the important things to realize also is that it's the intent of the treasurer department and the town manager to continue each month putting that money in the set aside to be prepared for next year as well. Obviously, as council moves along, it's going to be very fluid, and cash flow is going to be really important, and it's going to be determined, but that is certainly the intent to do that if at all possible. And I know that none of us know what this year really truly has in store for us as individuals or as a community, but I'd like to say, and I will certainly say next week, that I really appreciate council's over the last good many years carefulness with the budget and carefulness with the spending, and just having oversight there that nobody 12 years ago or 16 years ago or 8 years or even a year ago could foresee something like this taking place. And I just respect each and every one of you and applaud you for at times when it would have been easy to spend because it was there, being willing to hold off in preparation for the future. So I just commend all of you for that.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion for the public hearing for the budget.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Anything additional on the budget, Mr. Davis?
No, sir.
Okay, the next item is to discuss the draft comprehensive plan update zoning and subdivision ordinance and zoning map. And I specifically asked the town manager to give a little update on that because there have been a lot of questions since some residents received letters. In fact, you want to address why some received letters and some didn't?
I can. The legal requirement for, and it's not a letter, we send a mailed copy of the advertisement of public hearing is the requirement by state law to, if it's more than 25 properties, to those that are affected by the rezoning. Some properties in town are not affected by the rezoning. There are zoning changes in districts, but that doesn't mean they get an actual physical copy of this public hearing. That requirement is that we publish it in the newspaper. And so there are some people that are not getting these, and they might have a friend that lives on one side of town that's getting an item in the mail for the public hearing, and somebody on the other side of town that's not, but it's because their property's not getting rezoned specifically. And that's what triggered that mailing. I'll start with the comprehensive plan, and that is, this is a living document. It's supposed to be, to show what we can potentially do 5, 10, 15, 20 years. However, the state law requires that it's updated every 5 years. Actually, if you're doing a pretty good job, you try to make some changes that needed at least once a year. It has sections about transportation, their economy, our schools. Even though we don't have any that the town's responsible for, education is a big community aspect. And so it's not just about, public, private, higher education. It's about all of those opportunities and how that benefits our community. It talks about housing. So it's multifaceted in covering, and of course, future land use, which is planning and zoning. It's a multifaceted plan for us to use as a guide when you're making decisions, and I'm promoting different opportunities to you and options. It's used to also help us as we do that and even forming the budget, because if it's a transportation issue, we might want to make sure it's in the capital improvement program that follows the guide of the comprehensive plan and then goes into the budget. So it kind of ties into a lot of situations and areas for us. The zoning and subdivision ordinance, and so that plan is going to look quite a bit different in some ways. Some of the projects you'll see have not changed because they haven't been done accomplished since the last time, and some of those haven't changed because they might come from our V-Trans 2030 or 2035 document that's still around. Anyway, the zoning and subdivision ordinance, it is obviously separate currently in our current code. There's a zoning section, there's a planning section that talks about the commission and its duties and all that type of stuff, and then there's a subdivision section. As I came to you on the 13th of this month, will be 2 years ago that you allowed me to sign a contract with the Berkeley Group. We've talked about this even before that when I was coming here in October of 2017 because of a project, and it was determined then how our zoning ordinance and comp plan needed to be revamped. So we have been down this trail for quite some time, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It takes time. This was to be a 20 to 22 month process. We had some extra time in there where citizens wanted some more input, so we added that extra time in there. So if you look at this, for all of these, the zoning map, all of these, I'll touch on this. We began with the conversation with staff, that this is predominantly a 1973 zoning subdivision ordinance. It needed some changes, maybe even some rewrites. Once the company looked at it, they looked at, why don't we just merge these? Most places have zoning and subdivision together. We could take, so there's different things like that transpired. We then said, okay, what does the community want? How we need to talk to the people that live here, work here, those types of things. We had 2 different events where we invited people to come, sit around tables. It was moderated, and the second was interactive with some maps and actual parts of the plan, which was transportation, recreation, and all these things. That was followed up by those that couldn't attend that. Hopefully they would fill out a survey. It was in paper form, it was in electronic form, to get community input. That was followed up later on, because then they took all this information, the Berkeley Group, and they looked at what they had, they took in the information, the majority of the information, not onesie-twosies. I mean, that's not the goal here. It's what is the majority, what is good for, and best practices in planning and zoning as well. And so when they did that, we came back with a draft. And so we had an open house where public could come. They did 2 work sessions, I think, also mutually with the council and the planning commission. But I'm talking about community aspect of them having their input. We had one in December of 2019 where we had an open house. There was easels, things taped along the walls on both sides. They were here to answer questions. They gave a presentation. The public asked that since it was so close to Christmas, I think it was a week or 2 before Christmas, could we have another one? The council granted to pay more, and we had another one in February. In February, at another open house, same thing, same discussions. Actually, already had some changes from the first open house, took in some more information, and also from the planning commission. And then they had a public hearing. The planning commission had a public hearing in May. They made a slight modification even from, in the comprehensive plan at that meeting, based on a caller that called in, and it was a few words, and they made changes. But they unanimously, except for the chair couldn't be here, he was on military leave, they unanimously approved the comprehensive plan, the zoning, I say approved. They approved to recommend to the council, let me get the language correct, the comprehensive plan, the zoning and subdivision ordinance, and the zoning map, as it is presented to you now, and you've had copies of that in your Dropbox as well. Next week is the public hearing for it. I have received some emails, as I think some of you have, asking different questions. So in the zoning, one of the questions is some concern about some slight changes from R1A to R1. The lot size is decreasing from 20,000 to 14,000, which if you take 20,000 square feet of lot size, that's almost a half an acre. For a city or town, that's a large lot size for a more suburban, if you will, concept. So that's moving to 14,000, which is currently what the R1A is, which is still a pretty good sized lot. And actually, we have some lots when people want to tear down a house and put a house back up or develop a vacant lot. There's older lots off of Griffin Boulevard, the avenues, that aren't that large. Off of Longwood Avenue, off of some of those streets, they're not that large. So we have to, give them some, there is some wiggle room in the code to make another house fit if they put it back in the same footprint and some other things, but 20,000 square feet is pretty large. And so also the other decrease was instead of 100 foot of frontage, it's moving to 80 feet of frontage, just 20 feet. The R3A and R3, if you remember, the whole goal of this was to reduce, for size of our town, we had 5 residential districts, 4 business districts. In some of them, there was like, I don't know that you could pinpoint exactly what the difference in them were. And so the goal now is to have 4 residential districts, 3 business districts, and to alleviate some of those issues and consolidate. So you'll see that the Berkeley group will be here next week, and they can give you all they'll show you in a presentation of the different, where we were, where we're going in this, and things that they've changed along the way. Overall, nothing is going to be 100% for everybody. But I think the time that has been spent, the amount of community input has probably been the most. I haven't been here that long, but from what I can see and what I've heard, it's probably been the most input the community has been able to give on a topic in quite some time. And that was the goal of this. That's why we did it, I believe. But I think it's something that is much better than what we currently have, and I think it's setting us in a direction for the future that we can have opportunities during that time. You probably didn't want all that, sorry.
Can you explain a little bit why, or how the distinction was between B2 and B3, and how that was, going down West 3rd Street, and you got a lot of B3 there, which is basically for chains and restaurants, things like that. And I have a concern, being a business owner, because I've got an R3 that's surrounded by B3 property. And how is that distinguished? How is that?
More densely, it would be able to use it for a lot of more types of uses, I believe is what they'll share with you.
So the public hearing is next Wednesday at our council meeting. We will still be closed. The town hall will still be closed, correct?
Yes.
So tell us the options that the public has to give their input.
Public has the option of, as in previous meetings, if they call and sign up to speak during the public comment or the public hearing, we provide them with a conference line number that they will be able to give their public comment as if they were standing here. Kind of like Ms. McCarty did the last month when we had her public hearing for the abandoning of the alley. They could email, and I could read their concerns for you all. They could call and voice their concerns and tell me that they want it to be stated at the meeting. And I can try to get it as accurate as I can. But I think there's, all of those ways are the ways that we've been doing this and offering ever since we had to keep the continuity of government when we declared an emergency. And when the Virginia Attorney General came out and said these are options in how we can do these meetings without letting the public in here and the others live streaming the meeting.
So I would encourage anyone who wants to comment to email their comments or call and get a conference number and express their concerns next Wednesday. I know I've had a couple people email me about how can our concerns be expressed, and those are ways that you can express them at the public hearing next Wednesday. Any council members have any questions, concerns? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Davis. You covered the topic well. COVID-19 Governor's Phase 2. As the governor announced yesterday, we are moving into Phase 2 on Friday. And I've already had a couple of calls from restaurant owners who were a little concerned that perhaps we might ask the governor to delay us, and I assured them that we are following the governor's orders. Whatever is allowed in Phase 2 is what we will allow. They didn't want a situation to occur that occurred in Richmond where they thought they were going into the phase, they ordered their food and found out on Thursday afternoon that it was going to be delayed down the road. So you want to talk a little bit about what will happen in Phase 2?
Yeah, I actually have all I've been able to do is print it off and probably not read however many pages of this since yesterday. But I would suggest, I had mentioned to you all in the beginning about speaking specifically about town hall, about when we might reopen physically to the public. And the opportunity might come during Phase 2. I've kind of thought through that a little bit more, and not doing that quite yet, maybe in a different part of Phase 2 or waiting for Phase 3. And the reason I say that is because in the very beginning it talks about limit the occupancy of physical space to ensure adequate physical distancing be maintained. He still encourages telework whenever possible. We're not teleworking. And for those that telework that's not feasible, temporarily move or stagger workstations, keeping. And so what we've been doing is, even if we're here, we've been emailing as much as we can instead of going to one another in directly. We have implemented, obviously, these since the last amendment to another executive order about wearing masks, and that is if you're not in your workstation or if you're at the office, then you should wear these in the building to talk to somebody else in their area, which is a little different. So we've taken those parameters. It says, in another section, it talks about use of technology to reduce person-to-person interaction, including contactless payment and ticket scanning. We, I think, are doing pretty well with that, in that you allowed us not to charge the convenience fee on the credit cards, so people are either putting it in the box outside or they're paying online. We haven't heard very few complaints about that, if any. We've also done our building application. Mr. Davis is probably aware of that in his business, in that you can email it to us, or you can put it in a Dropbox after you physically filled it out. But the problem with that is when contractors would come in, there's no physical barrier. And many times, a concern even before this, but they will walk up to that assistant's desk and almost lean over or stand right beside it. And so that's an issue in the past that we might need to, I felt when I first got here that there needs to be a barrier that people just can't come to somebody's work area, but especially now. And so that's a concern of mine in letting this go in phase 2, is people may stop doing the email version of the building application or any of those. Even for our office and the town manager's office, there's no barrier. They're going to come right up to Ms. Vaughn's area, and a lot of people in the past, I've seen them, they just lean on the desk. And that's not safe for her and for her environment that she's working in. So I think there's, some of those reasons why right now that we should wait a little bit longer as far as opening completely. I do have recreation, curious of whether I'm meeting with Nady tomorrow about summer camp, and we're going to talk about what she's planned out if we were able to do it with kids, and I can keep you up to speed on that of what we do. I've looked at the thought of opening up rental facilities. However, there's a requirement of no more than 50 people. Somebody can tell us they're only going to do 50, but at the same time, it could be more than that. So I'd like to look at that a little bit further before we commit to reopening those back at this point.
Any questions or comments?
Is there a way that we can open this meeting up? I mean, if I was a public speaker, I would want to come in and address a council in person, not over the phone or send an email. And given the fact that you can have up to 50 people, if you can have a space requirement, is the parameters that we can set for council meeting next Wednesday that some public can come?
That's totally up to you all.
I mean, we got the budget, we have the zoning, that's public hearings, and particularly zoning it could be a hot topic. But we have to have some way to control who comes in, who's allowed to come in, so you don't have a packed house, basically.
We would have to limit the number of come in. They would have to maintain their 6-foot social distancing. They would have to wear masks. And are we prepared to control all that?
I'm sorry?
Is it possible just that they could make an appointment to come and speak in person if they agree to put social distancing and wear masks?
That is totally up to you all, however you want to handle it.
I did see one locality who kept folks outside, and they allowed them to come in, outside, obviously social distance, but they allowed them to come in one at a time, wear their mask, speak, and go back out. So that would probably be the safest avenue, is just to allow folks, if they want to come and speak in person, that they stay outside, we call them in one at a time, let them speak and leave. That would probably be the easiest way to control it.
I would be in favor of that.
I'm in favor of it too.
Well, for that to happen, y'all are going to have to go back to sitting where you're supposed to, and not social distance.
I don't mind moving back and even standing out of the way while they come in and do their presentation, but I'd like at least they have an option that they want to come in person, they can, and be able to speak on these issues.
Why don't we do this, and we can put it out there, anyone that wants to come in person, call and make an appointment, and we'll relocate you for that portion of the meeting, and let them come at the appointed time and speak, and then depart. We can control the flow that way.
They'll have to have a mask.
They'll have to wear a mask.
What's the understanding that they wear the mask and have the protocols, and we follow the protocols that we have in place?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll figure out from a staff perspective how we'll make that work.
But they will need to call and make an appointment, and we'll let you know that they're coming, and then we can
We can plan ahead.
plan ahead for that. And
Yeah, they
if
do
anybody
have
wants to
some
come.
kind of paper announcements that call ahead, you want to make a personal appearance.
I would be really concerned about multiple people gathering in here.
Yeah.
And
Maybe we have a mic stand that can move. back.
We only have, I think we only have the availability for this one.
So do we have, I guess the question is, do we have another mic? If we move the stand, because it's wireless, right?
I think we only have one mic
We have
available.
two. We have
We
one.
have two?
Yeah. So if we set the mic from the back side of the room, they can address us from there.
Yep.
And when it's your turn to address us, we just move the mic stand after we think and move back up front.
and what we
We'll work on
need
the
to do is sanitize the mic between each speaker. We need to be prepared, like I said, to sanitize the mic between each speaker.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I think we can make that work. Okay, any other questions, concerns? Will you address real quickly recycling? I had a call about that. We are back in the recycling business.
Yes, steps opened up June 1st, and we started taking recycling right before Memorial Day weekend.
We just have to get together on the 5th week of recycling.
I still have that.
Yeah.
Did you have anything else?
Just a closed portion, that's all.
Nothing else for the open session?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Hunter, do you have anything?
No, I'm nothing right now.
Mr. Vincent?
That's it.
Ben?
I'm fine.
Mr. Water?
Quickly, and maybe some others received it, questioning, this is Deanna Bennett, a Crestview resident who is questioning either the possibility or why there are no sidewalks in Crestview. So I realize that there's buckets of money are not sitting around right now for a project like that, but I was just curious about if anybody knows the history of why. Was it up to the developer originally to put them in, or have we contemplated it, or anybody have any?
Mr. Davis, you want to speak to that?
I can't
We
speak.
discussed in the comp plan.
Yeah, I can't speak directly to the history of it necessarily. What I can speak to is discussions with the consultants and the planning commission. Some of the planning commission wanted to look at requiring developers to put in sidewalks in residential areas. Currently, we do make it required in commercial. Since I've been here a little bit before, any commercial areas, there's requirement for sidewalks. One of the discussion items during the comp plan was in residential areas. If you notice, the town of Farmville does not have a stormwater management system as in some larger places or in cities that have what is called an MS4 system. And so that stormwater system goes into culverts and it doesn't go out to just how it's processed, if you will. Here, we use ditch lines. And that runoff is going in those ditch lines and then ends up into a natural area. The culverts that you see, the stormwater drainage that you see in the commercial areas, those are going into culverts, but then they're going into a retention area of some sort, a BMP, best managed practice for stormwater retention. And so it's going into those areas. When we talked about traditionally when you put in sidewalks, you put in curb and gutter so that the sidewalk is elevated and not at the street level. And in order to do that, then we would have to figure out something else for stormwater management, because then you could not use the ditch lines and the natural drainage for those types of infrastructure. I'd be happy to talk more about it. We can look at options for future if the infrastructure committee wants to do that. I just think we're a little limited in what we can and cannot do. And the key point in time to get it done is when a developer is developing. After the fact, it's a lot harder for localities. You're going to have to begin to budget for those as capital improvement items. If we don't have enough right-of-way built in, then we would have to purchase right-of-way. in order to put those in, depending on the size that we have in front of those properties. So there's a lot of logistics to it. It's just not as easy as putting in sidewalks. Yeah, I'd be happy to have further conversations and those types of things. That's my basic view right now and what I can share with you.
I remember this matter coming up years ago,
Yes.
and because of a certain hotel up that way, certain people, I don't think, wanted this foot traffic.
They didn't want people walking in their area.
Exactly, especially from the hotel. But I mean, it might be some documentation somewhere on it, but this was a big discussion in reference to foot traffic in that area. Maybe the people have changed, but I mean, there was a big discussion on it.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Anything else, Mr. Dwyer? Mr. Reed?
No, sir.
Mr. Davis?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, with that, Mr. Davis, would you read the closed session motion?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I move that Farmville Town Council convene in closed meeting pursuant to the Code of Virginia in accordance with the provisions of paragraph A1 of section 2.2-311 to discuss the performance of the town manager concerning specific personnel matters.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. We will adjourn to the EOC Center for the closed session.
No, I would, yeah, because they get. I wasn't sure if we had the outlet available for 2 microphones at the same time.
I can check it out.
Okay. That's the only thing I was looking for.
I'll look into it this afternoon.
wear his face mask, facial ID, don't recognize your phone.
Hey, one thing. Is your work?
Oh, yes. I love it.
Still with someone?
Exactly.
Mhm. Okay, everyone's back. We returned from our closed personnel session, and there's no additional action to take as the result of that. So I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, do I need to come out of closed session?
Yes, that'd be good.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, whereas the Farmville Town Council has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. And whereas Section 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the Farmville Town Council that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that the Farmville Town Council hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which the certification resolution applies. And only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the Farmville Town Council.
Second.
Motion and second, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Benson?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
And Mr. Davis?
Yes. Now that we are out of closed session, there's no additional matters to be considered. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion and second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Our work session is adjourned.